This is Revelation Response, a podcast where we talk about who God is, what He's done in our lives, and how we can't help but respond in worship. We want these episodes to be an encouragement wherever you are on your faith journey, to pay attention to what God is saying to you, and to consider how you might respond. Hey, well, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Nate Souza, and today I've got a good buddy, Brett Rutledge. Welcome to the show, man.
Hola, how are we?
Hola. Is that going to be the extent of your Spanish?
See.
No, that is. Dude, thanks for coming on today. So Brett and I met at Fellowship right when I got here. So like 2015.
Yep.
You were leading worship and songwriter guy and doing all the stuff. And so I'm so glad that we've gotten to become good buds over, gosh, it was like eight years ago.
Was it really 8?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for coming on the show today. I'm excited to talk about your story, and I don't want to give too much away, but just you've recently made a pretty big change in terms of vocation and kind of what you're all about. So
yeah,
maybe, well, for folks that don't know, maybe talk a little bit about
how I got here.
Yeah, leading worship and doing all that stuff. Maybe you could go all the way back to the beginning if you want.
All the way back to the beginning.
Take me back to young Brett.
In a world. Oh, man. Gosh. I didn't know.
Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Alabama.
Okay.
A city called Trussville, Alabama. And I remember singing my first solo.
Okay.
At 6th grade. My parents made me try out because I think they heard me singing in the shower. And my parents can both sing. I have 2 sisters. They both sing.
Yeah.
And they made me try out for this part. And I still remember it. I'm not going to sing it here. Get up to sing and the CD skips.
This is in church?
This is in church.
Okay.
I'm nervous out of my mind. I sing my lines. The CD skips. I go back to my seat and they're like, Brett, we need you to do it again. And I was like,
start over.
What? So my first solo, I sang twice.
Oh my gosh.
And one of those God things, got a guitar, and I had a youth pastor see something in me I didn't see in myself and kind of developed me as a worship leader. And that's a big story for me as well. Even getting a guitar, I had a lot of nerve damage on my arm when I was born. I think you know that story a little bit.
Yeah, well, tell a little bit the story.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Was born, got stuck on the way out. Doctor pulled on my neck, my head to get me out. Ended up ripping and damaging nerves in my left arm. My parents didn't know something was wrong until I was like 5 months old. Okay. Figured out something was wrong, and there was a doctor in Virginia that would do a specific surgery. So I've had 3 surgeries to fix it. Okay. The first surgery, they got nerves out of my legs to replace the ones damaged in my arm. Got these crazy scars down the back of my calves. When I was 4, they repositioned my shoulder with a muscle. I don't really remember that one too terribly much. And then when I was 12, I couldn't supinate. So when you turn your palm over to get change from somebody, I can't do that with my left hand. I can force it.
You got to move it. Okay.
Yeah. So they went back in my arm. They broke it, rotated it, put a metal plate in my arm.
That's crazy.
And then got a muscle from my left, like kind of quad up, I guess, higher, and then put it in my like pectoral muscle. And so I wanted a guitar when I was like 14. And my mom was like, you're not going to be able to do it. I mean, she didn't say no, but I was like, well, forget that. Girls love it. And one of my best friends was going to teach me. So the first song I ever learned on guitar was Slide by Goo Goo Dolls.
There you go.
Right. You know, that whole thing. And somehow found myself leading worship, and a youth pastor poured into me. And it was one of those God things that I was able to learn how to play guitar. I feel like it was God limiting me of like, hey, worship music's like 4 or 5 chords. You can do that, buddy. But I also realized that my vocal was also an instrument. Yeah. And so I had a youth pastor and some friends in college, and I led for Campus Crusade for Christ in college, and met a family friend who knew Jason Ingram, who led at Fellowship Brentwood at the time. Yeah. And I got to meet with him, co-write some songs with him. Got a song on an Aaron Schuster record forever ago.
What song is that?
A song called Forevermore. It wasn't a single.
Okay.
I think it should have been.
Yeah.
But I friggin' loved the song and loved the opportunity to like get to write with Jason and Aaron and all these people.
So you had to be pretty young at that point when you were co-writing with him, right? Like
Yeah, I was maybe 19 or 20.
What was that like for you? I mean, did you already know he was sort of a big deal? I mean, Jason's written so much of the songs we sing in church, for those that don't know, like a huge songwriter guy. So for you to be with him, was it a little intimidating, or were you like, oh, yeah, let's just do it?
I mean, my friend Tamara, who knew him, who managed him at the time, that was our family friend, was like, hey, Jason heard this CD that you have, like this worship stuff that you're working on, and he would love to write with you. I was like, oh, okay. You know, and she was like, no, this is a big deal. Like Jason's kind of up and coming. I think this was before Jason is now what he is. And he was the second person in my life to see something in me I didn't see myself. So like my youth pastor, like Jason. And so I came up there and just, I was like, here's some ideas that I have. I don't know how to do this, you know?
Right.
And he was like, yeah, man, let's get after it. I want to hear your heart for worship. Yeah. You know, and kind of wanted to develop me as an artist or a worship leader. And I wanted to finish my degree. I played tennis in college for a year and then transferred to Alabama and then just like led worship at Alabama. I didn't play tennis there or anything. And then once that, I graduated December 07, moved here in January 08. And was just like, all right, let's do the songwriting thing. Let's figure this out. Let's lead worship.
And that's why you came to Nashville, was to do the music thing.
Yeah. And so that's how I got connected with Fellowship, because Jason was one of the worship leaders here at the time. And Rob Howard was over the worship department. And Jeremy Deibler, Carl Carty, Ronnie Freeman, Christy Knuckles had just left, and then Jason.
Okay, that's cool. So you come in to do all that. Were you thinking, this is going to be a career for me? Like, I want to make this my thing, like trajectory-wise?
Sure.
Or were you just doing the next thing in front of you? Like, I'm going to do this for now, and we'll see.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of both. Okay. I was like, you know, what do you call that? A big fish in a small pond, or whatever.
The opposite?
Or is it the opposite? Yeah, sorry. Whatever those things are.
In Alabama.
So like, you know, I'm moving to Nashville. It was super humbling to be here.
Totally
and
different.
Be among a lot of great songwriters and great worship leaders and great musicians, all the above. And so you get here and you're like, well, who the heck am I? You know, and even something that still plagues me today, we can get into this later, but like the imposter syndrome, like who am I to like play these songs, to lead these songs, to lead people to the throne of God? You know, like who am I? I'm just a screw up.
Yeah.
That's so
interesting perspective.
So yeah, it was kind of a little bit of both. Like I wanted to really, if I was going to do it, like let's do it. Like move to Nashville, and then met Jason, got some songwriting going, and ended up signing a publishing deal with Word for 3 years when I was in my mid-20s. And it was incredible opportunity to write, you know. Yeah,
what is that like? I mean, I know a little bit about that world. Maybe some people listening don't know anything. So if you're published, or if you're signed to a publisher, what does that entail for you? Like, do you have to turn in a certain amount of songs, or?
I think, the deal that I had was like 150 songs a year. Which if you're hitting, you know, 10 to 15 songs a week, that quota is not hard to get. So it's not necessarily about the songs. It's just getting in the room, and it's like working out. The more you work out, the stronger you get. Just like songwriting. I feel like the more you do it, the better you get. And
do they pay you to have that position, or do they only pay you if something gets like cut? Or?
No, they pay me a little bit. I mean, it wasn't a ton, and it like grew each year that I was there. But yeah, it was a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah. When I write songs, it's usually for a purpose, like a worship night's coming up, or there's like a sermon series that we're in. I've always thought it was really intriguing, like the 9-to-5ers, you know, where they just walk into a room and they clock in and they write songs and they clock out, and then Tuesday they just do it again. You know, it's like, it's a different like mode that you got to get into, where it's like, I'm just doing this all the time. I'm just churning out music. Did you have anything come out of that season that was I don't know, like a big song, or like did you co-write with people that you admired? Or
so I was super young, in 25, 26, somewhere in there. And so I got paired with a lot of like younger up and coming artists. And so me being a new writer, I didn't really get to write with a ton of really big people. A few that I like freaked out on. A guy named Robbie C. He's a worship leader out of Texas. I've gotten to meet him and hang out with him a few times. Got to write with Tony Wood. So in the room, it was me, Tony, and Robbie. And so I was like, like obsessed with Robbie, and then Robbie was obsessed with Tony, and then nobody gave a crap about me. I mean,
the girl getting coffee was like, "Hey, who's that?"
But Tony's an elder at Fellowship Brentwood for a long time, and he's just the most humble guy.
Totally.
And you know, every time we would come up with something, Robbie was like, "Tony, what do you think?"
Oh yeah,
you know. But that was really cool.
Okay.
I got to write with Dan Laius from Augustana. That was
love that band,
and just so cool. I mean, such a cool artist. Has an incredible story. He wrote the song Boston, which was just huge.
Oh man!
But just a melody lyric genius. And so those are probably the two biggest. And then I had a song on the show Nashville with a friend of mine, Jessica Campbell.
Okay.
And so that was probably really cool. We got to go on set and got to be there for the recording.
That's cool.
It was pretty
that's
fun.
Cool. Okay, so you're doing all this songwriting, and then you're leading worship a bit at church already during that time. I guess it's kind of like, you know, for some people, it's like, I want to be an artist, you know, so they want to write and they want to have records and tour and do that. Some people are like, I'm going to work in the church. That would be my path. You know, like I just want to lead worship. I want to be in a local church and whatever. Some people do it on the side. Like, you know, I just help out with the church or do whatever. Like, did you have a lane that you wanted to run in at that time with music, or was it more open? Or?
It was kind of open. I think I knew I wanted to songwrite, and the only thing I knew to write was worship and CCM.
Okay.
So the first 5-6 months I got to Word, the guy that got me there, a guy named Chad Segura, who was still one of my biggest fans, and I love him. He's fantastic. Got fired.
Wow.
Within 6 months, I was like, what the heck do I do? And so me and my friend Hillary McBride got to write together a lot, just for the heck of it. And I had all these ideas that were about girls and relationships. And I was like, can I write these? Is this okay? You know, and her husband was like, you guys sound great. Y'all should just keep doing this. And y'all should try out for American Idol or The Voice. And so we ended up doing that and made it all the way to the executive producers for The Voice. I almost got on the show as a duo. And Word was like, hey, we'd love to make an EP with you guys. And so I got to write and open my mind up to like country and TV film and all this stuff. And I think it made me a better songwriter to just have all those experiences in writing about different stuff that I never really allowed myself to growing up.
Because they were out of the box or not useful.
I never got to use my falsetto. I never got to like do anything crazy. And I remember the first time performing with Hillary. We're called the Running Roots. We haven't made music in a while, but I think our stuff's still on Spotify, which is super fun. I remember performing and was like, it's so different than worship leading, because worship leaders, you know, there's some excellence that we want to bring to the table. Yeah, of course we want to sing well, but also we want to lead people to thrones. So we're kind of like weirdly getting out of the way. And if you're an artist, you're kind of like up front and whatever. And I was like, that can't be glorifying to God, you know? But I remember performing and I remember just like tearing up, being like, this is still like an expression of my talent that God's given me.
Totally.
This is incredible. And it's still a worshipful moment. And so at that point, it like kind of switched in my head.
Okay. So, and that's kind of around where I met you, 2015, you know, moving to Nashville. And I remember you were taking a job at like a church in
Alabama.
Decatur.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Alabama,
How did I remember that? I don't know.
That was talent.
But yeah, I remember when we were just getting to know each other, we were in a couple groups together, you know, guys groups, and kind of just picking your brain going like, do you like this? Is this like, you know, I remember those conversations of like, is this like best case scenario for you? And I could kind of tell you were, it was like grateful for the position and the role, but also going like, is this sustainable? Like, what do I belong here at Fellowship? Should I be changing, you know, like, and so maybe speak a little bit to that part of your story. It was where it started to be a little bit shaky ground where it's like, okay, what am I actually doing with the music portion of my career, whatever? Yeah,
the like artist thing, I guess, never really worked. I don't know if I ever really pushed for it.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. It's kind of a weird, I think worship has become its own genre in a way in Christian music. And so I don't know if I like wanted that or not. I think I like entertained it and maybe chased it a little bit, but leading worship's always been a big part of my life. And, so I took this job in Decatur, Alabama, at First Baptist Decatur. One of my good friends was a college leader when I was in college. He was a leader at a couple of camps, and so he's now the pastor there. And they wanted to start something a little more contemporary, I would say. And we had it in the gym. And so he was like, dude, could you come lead worship? I know you're not leading at a church right now. And I was like, sure. Yeah. And then also to help develop their student ministries band.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was a big part of it as well. And so I was like, yeah, kind of prayed about it and thought about it. I was like, I think this is me. Let's figure this out. And so would go down on Sunday morning, stay Sunday night, and then drive back Monday.
Okay.
And so I knew it wasn't sustainable for a long time.
Because how far is it? Like an hour?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Yeah.
But I knew it was it was a great opportunity to serve along with friends.
Yeah.
And to still, I think I've had to redefine what success looks like as a quote unquote songwriter and worship leader.
Yeah.
Like if I get to do it for a living and get to impact people and get to pour back into students the way my youth pastor poured into me is like huge.
That's
and
huge.
if I can encourage them, even if this isn't what they want to do for a career, that they can go to college and be like, hey, I can try out for the worship band at my college ministry. Like I know how to follow click. I know number system. I know blah, 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 you know?
That's
and
cool.
That's also what I've done here at Fellowship with the student ministry.
Yeah.
So it's definitely changed.
Talk about that. So you were at, so then I guess the next thing in your trajectory was huge involvement with RFSM. And then huge involvement with Fellowship Nashville. So like it was those two kind of paired together. What was that like, for you?
Oh, goodness. FSM, I'd been leading a group. I followed a group of high school students from 9th grade to 12th grade. Okay. And so we call that like a 242 group leader.
Yeah.
So I was already there. I think somebody was in the position of the worship leader at FSM when I first entered. And so they had me lead a few times, just, volunteer because I was there. And I was like, sure, I'll do that. And then the position opened and was able to kind of jump on board.
Yeah.
And so was there for 7 years. Isn't that crazy? And so
awesome.
we introduced Click and cues and all of that. And I knew if I had that growing up, it would have changed. I'm not sure if the listener knows, click track or BPM or all of that. And cues, it's like intro 2, 3, 4, and you're hearing that in your ears.
Right.
And it was super weird at first when I first moved to Nashville, but it's kind of a Nashville standard in a way, especially if you're in the studio, you got to be able to follow click.
Yeah.
And I moved here, didn't know how to do that.
Never done it.
Yeah. And so if I can teach these kids how to lead worship, how to, as Carl says, our heart's affection and our mind's attention, or mind's attention, heart's affection. And if I can teach these kids how to lead others well, even musically, I'm doing my job well. And so kind of, I guess, coordinating the band and getting the students and teaching them. We had like a worship camp in the summer, which was super cool.
I remember that.
It was just a great opportunity.
Sorry to interrupt. We just had Lindsay on the podcast, and she gave the talk that she gave at that camp.
Yeah, she did.
So because I still remember like what she said about coming in prepared for worship and like the old temple and all that stuff. Yeah. And so, that was such a huge, you said it and I'll just say it again. That's something I would have loved to have as a kid, like coming up playing music like that. There was like little bits of development for me along the way, but nothing as structured and as excellent as you guys have done at FSM. So like hats off to that whole program and what that meant, I think for people's development. Like I remember when you were not going to do it anymore, kind of transitioning out of it, just like what people said about you and like all of like the little notes and like the video, that kind of stuff about like, Brett's leaving kind of thing. It was like, that's legacy. Like, that's like really impacting people's lives, almost 2 full classes, of 4 years in high school to go through and they might look back at their young years and go, Brett was like our music guy and like he was the best and he, all these memories and stuff like that. So I just think that's so cool, man, when I think about being on this side of it, looking back, going like, people like that affected my life forever. So,
a big part of, I used to lead worship at camps and stuff too. Even before that for other friends and youth pastors, big part for me is I wanted to bring people in that wanted to hang out with kids. Yeah. Like wanted to go play ultimate or play basketball or talk trash at ping pong, all this stuff. Because if you can know all the good stuff. Because if you can know a kid's name And if you can know a little bit about their story and you can talk trash and semi-back it up at a sport, man, they trust you so much more on stage. And it's not about manipulation. It's about like trust. Like, hey, I know Brett. He's just like a dude, you know, and he's like trying to usher us into the presence of God. And maybe I don't know what that looks like, but yeah, he knows money. Yeah, I'll do it, you know? And so I tried to bring that same aspect to FSM and just being their friend and also being a leader. It just, I think it translated pretty well. And so what I love about FSM so much is that we've had like 242 group leaders also leading with the kids. And so you've got like a mix of not just all students, but it's students and leaders leading together. And I think that's a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah, for people to mentor. I mean, it wasn't as structured, like I was saying when I was growing up, but like I would play with my dad. You know, my dad was a worship pastor, so I would play drums at the time, like for him, you know, like on stage. But you know, the bass player was like a chiropractor, and the guitar player was like a coder, and like it was like all these different like, you know, and they all just volunteered at church or whatever. But I remember so many of them like pouring into me, saying like, Nate, you're doing a great job. And like, wow, I can't believe you're, you know, musical, like just like dear old dad. And it was like, just like things that meant the world to me. Cause I was like, you mean not like, I could be like that one day. Like, you know, because in my mind, it was like, my dad was like music pastor for like 15 years and like everyone loved him. And it was like this big thing. And so it wasn't just my parents pouring into me. Like you're saying, there's all these like adult figures that you just look back on and say, hey, thanks for, you know, having that role in my life, because maybe I'm not where I am today if that's not spoken in or that's not encouraged, you know what I mean? So, that's cool. And so that's happening the same time Fellowship Nashville is
so kind of kicking off. I've been hearing about Fellowship Nashville for years and years and years from Bill Wellens potentially. And I was a part of a church for a long time called Ecclesia. Okay. And it ended up kind of turning into Fellowship Nashville. There's a couple different iterations, and that's a long story in itself. But had been hearing about Fellowship Nashville for quite a long time. Okay. And finally got linked up about 6 or 7 years ago now as well. Okay. And that's, we're affiliated with Fellowship Brentwood, have a relationship, but we're autonomous. Yeah. And so we meet like Tool South area right now. And it's been incredible to work with Mark Irving and Levi Scott, and then our new pastor, a guy named Ryan Dowdy, and they're all fantastic. And so it's a great opportunity to serve with Molly O'Connor as well, and then Meredith Irving, Mark's wife. I didn't want to forget them as well. They're fantastic.
That's awesome.
But it's just such a cool opportunity to like lead on a Sunday is different than leading on a Wednesday. Yeah. When you've got adults more than just kids. Yeah. And you know what a Sunday is like. Totally. So for us to figure out what our sound is, because it looks different. Right now we meet in an elementary school. So we load in and out every week. Yeah. We've been doing that for 6 or 7 years. Okay. Our building is almost done. We're in like the Berry Farms area. Cool. Yeah. And so
you bought
bought an old YES building, Youth Encouragement Services. Okay. And so we're almost done. And so we'll be moving in there. And so
I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. We'll have to figure out what our sound looks like. We don't want to be like white savior church coming in there, hey, this is what we want to do. Right. But like, if we have a lot of different ethnicities and cultures, like I want to involve that. Yeah. And I don't know what the heck that looks like. Right. And I'm excited, but like, that's such a cool opportunity for us to grow and for me to grow as a musician and to, in a way, like give my job away to allow our people to volunteer and step into leadership and what that looks like. Yeah. So it's been great.
I wonder, what is your experience being a worship leader at a church and you're not full-time, like you're not there all the time and like in meetings and the whole thing. What's that been like for you? Do you wish it was more involvement? Do you kind of like the amount that you are now? Like what's that experience?
Yeah, I think it looks different now with going back to grad school for a marriage and family therapy degree. It looks different now. But at the time, I was in school full-time. Okay. I did a class all day Tuesday, and then Monday and Thursday night had a class. And so there were 2 classes for each like kind of half semester, I guess.
Okay.
Or I guess that's a full semester. And so being in ministry, being leading worship at FSM and Fellowship Nashville allowed me the flexibility to do school and them to encourage me to do school and the flexibility to do it. And trying to songwrite whenever I could. It's like
busy.
You just kind of do it whenever you can. And we can talk about that too. I don't want to jump the gun.
That's a perfect segue. So, it's maybe oversimplifying it, but it's like, when I met you, it's like music. Like the whole thing's music. And then I look at you today and it's like, you got all these clients and you're in the counseling field and the whole thing. So like,
it's crazy.
It's the low hanging fruit question. What in the world happened? Like what would the change come from?
One thing I didn't want to miss was you've been in the songwriting room before. You know what that's like. Yeah. It's almost like a therapy session with what you're bringing into the room that day.
Totally.
And that may be a country song. That may be TV. It may be worship. It may be anything. What God's teaching you.
Yeah.
And so it's not a hard left turn from songwriting and not a hard left turn from ministry, being in front of students or people and having hard conversations.
Right.
What kind of got me there? Goodness. I had one student go through some pretty heavy things. I don't give anything away there, but got to visit him and his family in the hospital. And I remember praying before I went in. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to say or do. That imposter syndrome, right? Who am I to sit with these people? Yeah, of course I'm not qualified. So I remember going in and just asking really good questions and like sitting in the middle of his pain with his parents. Of course, I got to pray with them and do life with them for another couple of years, and he's doing great. But I remember coming out of that going, wow, I loved getting to sit in their mess and bringing, not like I had anything to bring anyway, but just to be there. I don't know. Something came up in me. And so
it stirred kind of a different
So Scott Henderson at the time was like, dude, you should pay attention to that. And I was like, okay. And then dated a therapist for a little bit and always thought she was trying to get at me a little bit, and
that's got to be like an ongoing, theme.
For sure. It's like, for sure.
Are you therapy right now or are we on a date right now?
No, that's difficult. But like whatever I did naturally back to her as far as asking questions and kind of diving in, she was like, Brett, I know you don't really know what you're doing from a clinician standpoint, but if you did, I think you'd be really good at my job. You should pray about that. Yeah. And I was like, crap. Okay. So
is that to say you had the right instincts, but not the formal training? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've never really been book smart, but I feel like I've always had more people smart skills.
So put it together and it's like a good.
Yeah. And so I started praying about it, asking friends and mentors and family. And they were like, yeah, I think this makes sense. And so I had to take a test to get back into grad school, which I was like not excited about, but got in and got accepted. And I was like, okay, here we go.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where was that at? Where your program?
Trevecca.
Okay.
I entered, I think, fall 2019.
Yeah.
So right before COVID. Yeah. I wanted to be in this program because it was in person with peers. And then it turned out to not be in person with peers through COVID. And so the flexibility of still like leading worship, even though that looked a whole lot different through COVID as well, but getting to do school was just a blessing to like kind of concentrate on that.
Yeah.
And school for 2.5 years.
Okay.
And then now I work for Lantern Lane Farm, which is in Mount Juliet.
Yeah.
So I stopped leading worship at Fellowship of the student ministry last summer. Then took a job with Lantern Lane in August.
Okay.
And so Lantern Lane Farm is out in Mount Juliet. We've got horses. It's this beautiful property. So I'm pre-licensed. So I'm under supervision. So a marriage and family therapy degree.
Gotcha.
So working towards licensure.
So you have the degree. You need more hours, I guess.
More hours, and then I have to take a licensure exam.
Okay. And then at that point, you could have your own practice and do what
I can have my own practice now, technically, really? But I kind of wanted to work in a setting with other therapists and learn and grow. And Yeah, just the opportunity presented itself. And I remember interviewing and they're like, yeah, if you want to bring your guitar in the session or throw a football around. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And
speaking
this
all
week,
of your love languages.
Yes, all of my love languages, all the things. But I also know that like guys, we don't often want to sit and stare at each other and just talk about our feelings.
Like we are now.
Yeah, I mean, we are kind of, yeah. But like we're side by side.
Yeah.
Doing something together, and that's how a lot of guys connect.
Comfortable,
and they're comfortable doing that. And so, for me to feel the freedom to fully be myself and be sports Brett, as well as counselor therapist Brett, it's the same Brett. It's just a different avenue, I guess.
Man, I think I've got a lot of questions about counseling, but like one of the things for me is like. I think I would really enjoy a counselor that I could just like pal around with and like, buddy up with, rather than some of my experience with counseling has been a little bit more clinically distant. And, the experience of like saying something and then you feel like the response is like, client says A, I say B, like just like if he goes this direction, I now say this. It's more of like a rote kind of, it just comes across that way.
Sure.
And I'm just imagining like, throwing a football or like talking bands or, just connecting with people. Is it kind of a different way around the same thing? It's like, you want them to be honest. You want them to bring what's really going on. Yeah. And sometimes it's not as inviting when you're like sitting across from someone who you could tell doesn't really like want to laugh or joke around. They're just there to like do their job. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm just imagining you like crushing that aspect of it, which is so fun.
Well, a lot of therapy is connection and joining with your client. If they don't know you or trust you, I mean, self-disclose some, but it's not about me in the session. Yeah. But obviously, if there is some connection, I mean, I have a lot of athletes that I work with, and that's super important to me. My dad was hard on me growing up. I knew what it's like to play on a team sport, injuries.
Roll Tide.
There you go.
I had to drop it sooner or later.
You had to. So. I did not play at Alabama. Goodness, I wish I could have played tennis there. But it's just a language. Yeah. And so I would really love to work with athletes and then musicians, artists, because that's my world. That's who I am. And I feel like I know that language. And that's been super helpful to join with clients. Yeah. And it's been really special. Yeah. The one thing I would say that's been extremely hard and also rewarding is that it's not about me in the session. And so for me as a believer to leave that aside at times, to not look at people as an agenda and just to love them. That's been like challenging because I've had clients who bring stuff into the room and I want to be like, no, don't do that. No, but it's my job just to love them. And if they're, struggling with anxiety or depression, it's not like, well, what you really need is Jesus. It's like, maybe, sure. But let's treat the anxiety or depression and have conversations along the way. And that's been really challenging for my faith and also amazing at the same time. Is to have someone sitting across from me that is so different than me. Oh, yeah. And for me to have the compassion and the empathy just to show up and listen and love them without an agenda. Oh, man.
See, I feel like that would be one of the hardest things for me. Obviously, I don't have any of the training or any of the know-how, but the feeling of like, how do I fix this person, which I know is not the right instinct, but that's like constantly, I think what I would be up against is like they're pouring their life out to me or their situation or whatever, the reason why they came to counseling to begin with. Sure. Just not feeling equipped or they're kind of looking at me going like, now what? Now tell me what to do. Like you're the expert. Sure. And so how do you deal with that feeling? I mean, you talked about asking curious questions. Sure. Is part of that just like waiting for the Holy Spirit? I mean, even in you to like guide you or give you the right words to say? I mean, it's a big question, but it's like, how do you know what direction to go with a client,
Yeah, that can be difficult at times. I mean, I have them for 50 minutes. And so a lot of the work you do in that 1 hour is work for sure, but a lot of therapy is done outside, and it's on the client to do the work.
Yeah, interesting.
And so for me to say, let's fix your anxiety, or it's not fixing, it's learning how to cope with anxiety, to use strategic things to allow you to overcome it, and often even times welcome it. Be like, okay, what can you learn when you start feeling this anxiety? Like, what's going on in your body? What are the triggers? What are the signs? How do you welcome it to go, oh, it's alarming me that blah, blah, and so using it in such a way as to not, because I have parents that'll drop off their kids and like, fix my kid. And I'm like, don't go far. You might be the problem, because it's a family system.
Absolutely.
We all play roles. We all are a part of something. Yeah. And so when you show up wanting to be fixed, I think I had to kind of, when I first started my internship, I did at Trevecca's Counseling Center, and I worked with a lot of athletes. I just got done with school, and I'm like, okay, I got to try this modality. I got to try this one. I got to use this.
Yeah, all the stuff you just learned.
And all my supervisors were just like, just show up and be yourself and figure out what that is. And that's enough.
That's really good.
And I'm like, what does that even mean? Enough. I am not enough. And then you grow up thinking I'm not enough. And then the imposter syndrome. And then you have to go, okay, God's given me this opportunity to sit in front of this person for an hour. I'm going to give them everything I got. Yeah. And I hope they, in return, give me the same.
Right. I'm sure it's a mutual thing. Like, it can't just be all be one-sided. And, they're bringing their honesty, and you're bringing your listening and your questions and all that. And I think I heard you say before, like, I'm helping the person help themselves, or like find their own answers. Yeah. Which is a beautiful relationship. I think, obviously anyone seeking out counseling is there for a reason. Like, they didn't just stay home that day. They went to you for something, and so, it's I would imagine every client's different, and where to take it.
And then you've got parents that are bringing in kids that don't want to be there.
Oh, that's hard.
And that's difficult. That's been very difficult. But sometimes I'll wear my retro ones and they're like, oh, cool shoes, bro. Right. And I'm like, got them. Got them.
Let's talk about shoes for 20 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you learn to connect with them in the ways that you can. Yeah. And they learn to trust you. And hopefully it's a long game, but they start opening up and start letting you in on some of their things. Because I know that was my journey when I first started with my therapist was, man, I don't want to talk about these things. I'm just gonna wait, and then I'll throw it in the last 10 minutes.
We're out of time.
Yes. Oh, and we're out of time. Cool. We don't have to talk about that. And I see clients doing that.
You're like, I know that game.
I know that game because I did it when I first started. But I've seen so much growth in me and emotional maturity in me that I'm just excited for other people's journeys. Because I know for me, counseling was like the show Frasier. Or like psychology, like this dude had like all these books and he's just like smarter than you, and you sit down and you listen to him and he tells you what to do with your life.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. And just the way like counseling was like this weird connotation, like even in the office when Jim and Pam go to counseling, it's like there's so you only messed up if you go to counseling. Like, well, I mean, we're all messed up here. Right. Spoiler alert. So,
that's so true. That's such a thing, man. Like I remember thinking when we first did marital counseling, I was like, I will do this, but I don't want anyone to know about it.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of a shame, maybe is too much of a word, but it's in that direction, where you feel like you only go if you're broken or you only go if you're whatever. Right. But like you said, I mean, it's like, which one of us isn't, so like, why are we all secretive about that?
Right. Or, it's like on a Sunday morning, we can all put our mask on, but we don't talk about putting our mask on.
Yeah.
Totally, man. It's interesting.
So for you, I mean, you're kind of in the middle of the story, right? This isn't done for you. Like, it's a recent change. We keep talking about that as saying like, you weren't doing counseling 5 years ago and now you're full on in it and trying to get all your hours and do all that. Do you find the balance is working for you with music and with counseling? You're in these two worlds, it's kind of a unique position that you're in. How's that all going for you?
It's definitely a challenge at times to, just navigate life. But yeah, in those specific instances, I'm able to occasionally get a staff meeting with Fellowship Nashville, and they're still really flexible with me being part-time, with showing up on a Sunday and doing auditions, and occasionally getting a staff meeting and coordinating with our pastors on what they're speaking about and what songs work well, the whole game.
Totally.
And then as well, like balancing what it looks like to sit with clients well, and knowing what my limit is. I think at most 1 week I saw 18 clients, which sounds like a lot, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
No, it does.
But to me, learning how to not take it home at the end of the day, and then learning, like my roommates, they also like want to get home and they want to connect. Yeah. And so for me to give them some time to connect.
You're not like totally drained or just
right.
Like, can't,
well, sometimes I am, and I have to practice my own like self boundaries of, like doing I play pickleball a lot. Yeah. I love disc golf. I like bourbon. Like we can get into that too next if you want. But like all of these things.
Kind of my sporty friend, which I don't have a lot of.
Yeah. Well, all of these things, what do? They foster community. Yeah. So like for me, pickleball, like this morning, I got to play with some guys at Fellowship, Eric Hoffman and William was there, and got to see them again and some other people. It just fosters really good conversation. It's community. Yeah. Same with disc golf. You get to throw, you get to hit a tree, you get to say a cuss word, you get to like be outside. It's like, I need it. Yeah. It's self-care. You can carry on a really meaningful conversation and also do something sporty. Yeah. And then bourbon as well, like our wholehearted group. Yeah, we had like a bourbon tasting, and alcohol was not a thing growing up. And I've seen it modeled really well in my adulthood. And I'm like, can we do this? And it fosters.
We're a Bible study.
Yeah. It fosters really great conversation around brown corn water, and you're hanging out. And for me, it was just like, man, all of these places of community are coming together. Like, what does that mean? And so,
that's really cool, man.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. When you talk about like a community, it doesn't seem as disjointed as it does at first glance, where, and like you said, there's a lot of like, crossover, or like the Venn diagram, there's a lot of common ground on, it's not that different to sit with a student as it is to sit in a co-write, as it is to sit with a client. Like it's all listening, it's all ministry, it's all caring, it's all the whole thing.
And what it is like empathy. I'm just sitting and I'm caring. Yeah. And I think we've lost the art of listening and caring. Yeah. It's like, okay, are you done with your point yet? Shut up, my turn. And it's like, and I just think we've lost the art of that. And so I think counseling has allowed me to slow down, even in normal life, and just pay attention.
Yeah. I think at a lot of these interviews, I try to get to a spot where, all through your story, right? It's God showing you who he is, but also showing you who you are. Like I just think about all the people that spoke into your life, and just the fulfillment that you got from the relationships and ministry and from leading worship at the whole thing. And then what you did with all that, we talked a little bit about obedience and that being a response, to God's revelation of saying like, Brett, I made you to be a certain way. Like there's only one of you, and I want to use you in these ways throughout your life. Would you do that? Do you want to walk into that with me? And so, yes to worship leading, yes to songwriting, yes to counseling, and so I was just curious, like today, in kind of 2023, like currently, do you feel like God is revealing anything about himself or about you, or kind of what does response look like to you these days and where you're at? Yeah.
Ooh, that's a great question.
I know, big question too.
Big question. For me, I think growing up, it was, you lead worship. Here's how you lead worship. Here's the songs. Go for it. Yeah. And so for now, in some of my doubts and questioning, I was always told, or maybe it was more insinuated growing up, of like, hey, don't ask questions. It's a slippery slope, But for me, I think I'm finding God in the questions and in the doubt. And as we're singing some of these songs, I'm like, oh, that's hard for me to sing this morning. I need to check my heart. Yeah. I'll give you a few different references. Yeah. There's a song called Follow You Anywhere. And I was there when they released it at Passion. Okay. And I remember, follow you anywhere, all that thing. It gets to the bridge. And there was no context, no call to worship, no nothing. It said, wherever you lead me, whatever it costs me, all I want is Jesus. And I was like, I'm 0 for 3. I'm out. Wherever you lead me. Could be anywhere. Like all these college kids are like, wherever you lead me, God, and I'm like, do we know what we're singing? Wherever you lead me, whatever it costs me, could cost me everything.
It could cost a lot.
Yeah. And then all I want is Jesus. No, I want my phone. I want a relationship. I want, you name it, something else.
Yeah.
And so for me in that moment, it was really hard for me to engage. And so for me, I needed context of what do we do with these songs when our hearts don't line up with the songs in the moment.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you're making this a prayer or a longing or an aspiration of like, God, I want to say, wherever you lead me, I would go. Yeah. Whatever it cost me, I would do it. Yeah. And all I want is Jesus. Yes.
Yeah.
All
like
of
by
that.
faith.
Yeah, by faith. Like for me, it's hard to in the moment say God is faithful, but you can go, well, God has been faithful and God will continue to be faithful. And even though maybe there's a lot of questioning and uncertainty, to go, no, God is still faithful. I can sing that in truth. And so it's almost like talking yourself into this, if that makes sense. And you get it. You play these songs just as much as I do.
And I think what you said was really powerful about not being afraid to ask the questions or being told no, like that.
Right.
That was my upbringing too, man. Like it was like you either believe in God or you have a doubt or no faith at all. It was like it was very binary. It was like you're either in or you're out. Yeah. It's either the switch is on or off. And so I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to doubt because that showed I'm off. Like I'm out of the faith. I don't believe. And I do think you can go too far with that, with like the deconstruction of this and of that, and like nothing is true anymore, like how we were raised.
Sure.
I don't want to go that far, but I think there's a lot to be said about like questioning why you believe and asking those internal questions about, do I even believe this? That's a great example.
Yeah.
Because you come out to a better place anyway of saying like, okay, the reality is I do believe this, but it's hard today, and it's what I want to be true of myself. 100%.
Sure.
Like I want to be all about Jesus and nothing else.
Right.
In reality, I fall short of that in these ways. I think that's like a more nuanced, like complex faith than the on or off approach, which is like,
I agree.
I believe it and I'm never asking a question, So
I'm not the same believer I was when I accepted Christ at 7 and then when I rededicated my life at 16 and then even in my college years, and then even like 3 years ago. Yeah. I hope I'm changing. I hope I'm deconstructing in a way of then being able to reconstruct something together. And what I like to like call it like maturing in my theology, maturing in my faith. I hope I'm always doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that term has gotten skewed. Yeah. I do think there are some people that are deconstructing just to rip it all down.
Right.
And say, forget you, church, But I do think there are others in the space that are hopefully seeking and learning and growing. And I think that's where I'm at. And that's finally getting to a place of like, that's okay. I think God is in the tension. Jesus is with me in this.
Totally, man. Yeah. It's a mature look at faith. I think about too, like, being a parent or husband or any role where you're in the relationship where you're like, I shouldn't ever think that this is not the best thing. You know what I mean? Like I shouldn't ever like, and so, it's those times where you allow yourself to go like, no, this is really challenging. Yeah. Like I'm having a really hard day with this, and it's not to say like, I wish I wasn't a dad or I wish I wasn't, but to say like, the questioning and the sort of struggle, if you allow yourself to feel that and sit in that a little bit, I think you come out stronger than if you just avoid the whole thing to begin with and say, I can't go there. I don't want to like whatever, which is kind of like what you're saying about, I thought it was beautiful the way you talked about, depression and pain. You said like you can overcome it, but then you kind of turned around and was like, or you can invite it in, like maybe could you say a little bit more about like that move? I don't know if that's like is that something you learned in school or?
Well, no, I learned this from, I'm going to click on a thing. So this might be noisy for a second. But I learned it from a book called Voice of the Heart. Okay. It's a Chip Dodd book and he talks about these 8 core emotions, hurt, sadness. I'll show this to my clients. I'm showing Nate right now, this little document thing. Hurt, sadness, loneliness, fear, anger, shame, guilt, gladness. So it looks like there's only one good one, right? Right. Gladness. But like, no, there's a choice in all of them. So say that you're lonely. The impairment or the I guess the shadow side would be leads you to apathy, just leads you to like more loneliness. I don't care. I'm going to lock myself in my room.
Yeah.
Goodbye. That kind of thing. And then, but the benefit of loneliness is that it allows it to seek and help, or like seek healthy relationships. So it pushes you into relationships. So in each one of these feelings, there's actually a choice. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
So avoiding loneliness doesn't actually reap any of the benefit of loneliness.
Yeah.
It's like, it's okay to sit in that.
Yeah.
And where does that push you? Like a good place,
Yeah, it pushes you to relationships. So in all of these core emotions, like there's a choice.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I feel like we could double click on that for another hour, but we'll have to call it.
Sure.
That's really good, man.
I love it. Yeah. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on today and just talking about, your story. And I know there's so many aspects of it and so many personal parts of it, and just to it's actually really interesting to just hear it all in one sitting and look at God at every turn, and every part of the story is really cool, man. So I'm so glad to see you push into that counseling thing. It's been, I didn't see it coming. But when you started it, I was like, of course, that makes total sense. You know what I mean? Like that he would kind of access that part of who God made you to be to help people. And I'm so glad, man, that they have you, like I was saying before, someone that can actually buddy up with them. And because you might be the only person that can reach them, at that point, maybe. If they're, I don't like this guy and I don't connect with this lady, but like, I really like Brett. I see that can be so true of you. So anyway, I just want to encourage you, man.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Revelation Response is produced by Fellowship Bible Church and Fellowship Songs. You can check us out online at fellowshipbiblechurch.org or by searching Fellowship Songs wherever you stream your music. Also, please leave us a like and give us a follow to hear more episodes like this. Thanks for listening.
And then the music rolls.
Oh, you have it. What is that?
This thing came in with like...
Why didn't you tell me this before? That would have been so gold.
There's so many of them.
Dude, can you get stuff on there?
Yeah, you can load anything you want. Because you could do the laughter one and like...
Stop it.
That one's scary as all get out. Today on Revelation Response.
Dude, you can load some good ones in there.
Dude, I'm saying.
Yes, yay.